Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl Ilove, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. And as you know, we are all about empowering people, women and men, to take control of their lives. And today we have the most amazing guest who's going to share her story and give us some wonderful tips on taking control of our financial life. Her name is Marie Sonneman. She is a financial coach who helps women find their confidence in every aspect of their lives by taking control of their finances. As a police officer for 15 years, so let's all take a moment to thank her for her service, Marie struggled with her own confidence as well as imposter syndrome. And that all changed when she took control of her financial life. Marie is also the host of the popular podcast called Ordinary to Badass, which empowers women to be bold, confident, and authentic. Marie, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you because anybody who talks about being a badass is number one in my book. So tell us your story of how you came from being yourself ordinary and actually maybe even a little bit less than that to being a pretty much world-class badass.
Yeah, so it all started when I became a police officer, and really other people would view me as a total badass, and I just felt like a fraud and just felt like, oh, I am anything but a badass, and just lost my confidence once I became a police officer. And that was kind of strange for me because I feel like I had always been a confident person, but I was surrounded by, it's a predominantly male field. And so I would compare all of my abilities to their abilities and get caught up in that kind of the compare and despair thing, where you're looking at everybody else and be like, can I do what they do? Can I do what they do? Or thinking I had to do the things they did the same way, which it just doesn't work that way. You have to do things how they work for you. But I was too busy comparing myself to them that I completely lost all my confidence. And it was a struggle. And for a long time, I would try to say things to myself and be like, every day before I'd go to work, like in my uniform, I'd be like, I am strong, I am capable, I will survive, I'll never give up. And I tried to be positive about it, but I was still struggling hardcore. And I would say the thing that absolutely changed it for me was getting in touch with getting control of my finances. So I paid off $106,000 in debt in just under 2 years. And it's crazy that is what gave me the confidence that I needed and showed me, okay, just a little bit each day, be consistent and persistent, and just keep going. Like, it doesn't have to happen overnight. But then, funny enough, that confidence bled over to other areas of my life, like law enforcement. But it just took some time to get there. And really through that journey, I realized, okay, a badass, it's not about like a motorcycle or a gun or a leather jacket. It's about mindset and confidence. That's really what makes us a badass.
Excellent. And I couldn't agree more. I have to ask, how long did you struggle before you decided to, take control of your finances? So how long were you going through this imposter syndrome? And I love the way you put it, the compare and despair syndrome.
I mean, it was a good 10 years. It really was a good 10 years where I just was like beating myself up over every decision I made and just feeling like a fraud and feeling like I wasn't doing it the right way. And so it was a journey for sure.
So now that was in your professional life, or it was both in your professional and personal life that you experienced this?
Yeah, because when it starts happening in one area of your life, it tends to bleed into other areas of your life. And so I just was not motivated. I would stay home and watch TV all the time when I wasn't at work. I would just be lazy and, get in my head about things. So the finances were the thing that knocked the domino over, and then the other dominoes started following. So, I mean, thank goodness for that debt. Otherwise I wouldn't have had, the result that I had and like the confidence that I had, because it really taught me a lot about life.
I love how you said that, because thank goodness for that debt. I mean, it's amazing how the trials, tribulations, and challenges that we have in life can turn around to be one of the best, most life altering lessons and blessings that we can have and experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like crazy how the hard things can, change your life completely and set you down a completely different path. So like at the beginning, would I have wanted $106,000 in debt? Nope.
No.
It felt like a lot of pressure. It felt like weight on my shoulders and it felt dreadful. And how was I going to get out of that debt? But like now that helped me to get to where I am today, and it completely changed my life.
So then how did you take this experience of getting out of debt, that much debt in less than 2 years, and turn it into becoming a coach for women?
Well, initially, I just was like, okay, let me just do this for myself. Let me just figure out how to, get out of debt. I think finances aren't things that are taught to kids a lot of times.
Mhm.
Like growing up, you don't necessarily learn how to manage a checkbook or how to, keep track of your bank account. So, and now I just completely forgot your question.
Okay, so but what was the trajectory, or when that pivot point of once you got yourself out of debt to be able to turn that around and become a coach to help other people?
Oh
And like you
yeah.
said,
Yeah.
we are not taught. I mean, of a generation, I think, ahead of you. So we were taught how to manage a checkbook and stuff, and it was basically done in the home. But you weren't, and a lot of people are not taught that in school or at home. So they have to figure it out on their own after they're in trouble.
Right, right. Yeah. So after I got out of debt, I realized my parents were in a lot of debt. And I was like stressing out about their financial situation, because I was like, okay, they're going to retire soon and I don't want them to not have money. And so I went on to become a financial coach. And then through that process, I also ended up sitting down with my mom at her request and going through her finances with her. And you know what? By the time I became a financial coach, she had already paid off her whole, like her debt, her mortgage, everything. And it's like sometimes you just need like the smallest bit of help or the smallest boost forward, and then it completely like changes things for you. So yeah, seeing her journey was super exciting for me. And that's how I got into helping women with their finances.
I love how you said that, just that tiny little bit of encouragement. And, to me, it's hope that yes, you can get out of debt. And it starts with very simple steps. It's not like, oh my gosh, here I have this, $106,000, and how am I going to pay this off? I'm going to have to stop eating and, doing, paying the bills. Or I have to stop, cancel my TV subscription. I have to get rid of everything in life. And you and I were talking even before we started recording that it's almost like when people think about it, they think of it the same way as trying to go on a diet to get healthy and change their eating habits. And when people are confronted with that, it's like, I would rather have a root canal or stick red hot pokers in my eyes than have to change my life like that.
Yes, yes. And I I'm currently becoming certified as a health coach. So I am seeing all of the similarities between health and finances, but it's so interesting because it's like we often treat the secondary issue. We treat the money issues or we treat the food issues like, oh, just go change your food. But actually, it's really mindset. It's so much about mindset. It just kind of blows my mind. And it's like, yeah, a lot of times we're not getting to the root of the issue because we're dealing with the secondary problem, not, the mindset or the stress that's causing the spending. There are other issues and we're not necessarily dealing with the emotional part of it, but that is a huge part of it.
And that kind of scares people, I think, sometimes in dealing with the mindset, whether it's overspending, overeating, or bad relationship habits, or whatever. It's like, oh no, you want to reprogram my mind or my brain. And it's more about that self-awareness.
Yes, yes. And you know what? I can understand. Listen, I'm a police officer. I didn't deal with my emotions for a long time. Like I learned to shut them off. And so it's like, I absolutely understand that, but it's also just interesting. Hey, we can look at these different emotions we're feeling. When I'm not wanting to deal with being angry, when I'm not wanting to deal with being sad, then guess what? Then I go buy something online, or I go to the mall and go shopping, or I grab some food. It's sometimes just small things that we're paying attention to that can completely change your financial status or even your health journey.
I am a former respiratory therapist, so I worked for almost 20 years in critical care, emergency rooms, life support, resuscitation team, all of that. And I understand about having to turn your emotions off because you can't function and
Yeah.
do what you have to do if, you're just losing it emotionally, and then you just kind of keep stuffing it, and it has to come out eventually.
Yes, it does.
And most of the times when it does, it's not pretty.
No. And it's like it happens, and it's something that you can't control at that point.
Right.
It's like it's gonna come out one way or another. And it just could be like one instance in life, one life triggering thing or major event that happens. And then you realize, oh, that old way of being no longer serves me.
Mm-hmm. Are you a happier person now?
Oh yes, 100%. Yes.
Okay. I
Yeah.
can just see it. Of course, I didn't know you before, but you actually just beam. And it's really nice to see somebody who has that air of joy and confidence about them.
Thank you. And it's been a journey, and I'm still on that journey, but it's like I really forgot how you have to be intentional about the things you want and the things
Mm-hmm.
you want to experience. Like I love music and I love dancing. I suck at both of them. Horrible. Like beyond horrible. And you know what? For the longest time I wouldn't do it because it's like I was too embarrassed of how I would look or what people would think of me. And it's like, you know what? If it sparks joy, if it makes me happy, forget it. I'm going to do it. Like have a dance party, and I'll do that. Or like I'll meet with like my nephews or whatever, and we'll have dance parties and just like let loose and have fun. And it's like, who cares what you look like? If it sparks joy and it's not hurting anybody, then, make it happen. And then just also be intentional, like schedule it in your day so that you won't forget to do it.
Well, as a dancer myself, I say kudos, and I totally support that. But I'm laughing because I recently interviewed a woman who was talking about trying to find joy in her life and her personal journey. And she would take herself on dates. And one of them was to, getting out of her comfort zone. And she tried rock climbing.
Oh, nice.
And she said, I totally sucked at it. And she said, I was just hanging from the ropes, kind of swinging back and forth. And I was laughing so hard and having such a good time. And it's okay to suck at things as long as you're enjoying them.
Yes. Yes. So true.
So getting out of that perfectionist mindset and just into that spirit of playfulness and having fun and finding joy makes a difference.
Yes, yes. And you know what? I think that it helps. Like the more you do it, the more you become okay with doing it. Like the first
Mm-hmm.
couple times are hard. And sometimes I still get in my head, but I have to remind myself, like, do you want to experience joy? Do you want to do things you love? Who cares what other people think of you? So, it's always a journey. It's always something that I'm probably going to have to keep working on.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess if we're not growing, we're dead, right?
That exactly. And you're talking to somebody who started pole dancing at the age of 58. And
Woohoo.
I know. And last night I went and took a pole class. It was the first time I took the evening class because I know, it's really crowded. And, so there I am with a bunch of women who are in their 20s and 30s. And it's like, no one really cares. You're just doing it to have fun and to experience that camaraderie too. There was a really sense of community and everybody just cheering each other on when they managed to do something that they couldn't do a couple of weeks earlier. So it's all about having fun.
Yes, and I would imagine that that was like really empowering. Like it just makes you feel like, oh, okay, like gives you a little bit of swag. And I don't know, you have to do hard things sometimes to get a little bit more confidence or come out on the other side.
Absolutely. And the funniest thing is there was a woman in class that she's quite a bit younger than me, that we were actually in ballet class over 30 years ago.
Oh, I
So
love
I
that.
knew her. I knew her when she was 16. And now we're looking at each other going, my goodness, if we ever could have looked into that crystal ball and see what we would be doing 30 years later, just cracked us both up.
Yes.
So since we're talking about fun, let's put the fun in finances. So how do you do that? How do you start coaching women, and how do you convince them to change their mindset, and that getting out of debt and finding that financial freedom actually can be a fun and good experience rather than, oh my gosh, I've got to give up everything that I do?
I think that often we think of a budget or we think of getting control of our finances and we think of it as being so restrictive. Like, oh, I'm never going to be able to get my hair done again. I'm not going to be able to get my nails done. I'm not going to be able to do insert whatever thing that you love to do. And that's just not true. It's like prioritize the things that spark joy for you, the things that really matter. And I would say pick one or two things that you love doing or you love spending money on, and keep those things in your budget, keep those things in your life. And sometimes it's funny because you do this and something else. Well, let me give you an example. So I was refusing to give up coffee. I was like, okay, I'm not going to give up my Starbucks. I'm still going to have Starbucks. And yeah, I lowered the amount of times per week that I would get it, but I refused to give it up. And then through doing my finances, creating my budget, I ended up being like, you know what? I'm seeing results. Like I am doing good here. And so I ended up switching to creamer because to me, paying off the debt became more important and I was seeing the results. And so sometimes you keep one or two things that you love and you end up not really needing them anyway, like you thought you did. And so I think it's important to not restrict yourself, not get rid of absolutely everything, keep something in your budget that you love. And then I think you get more motivation that way and you'll be able to do it longer as well.
And now we're going to add that or segue to the health aspect of it as well. Same thing when you're trying to improve your health through what you eat. It's the same exact thing that you're talking about. You don't have to give up everything. You can still have your chocolate and your kale too. And it's all about making those choices and making that list and the decisions of what you can and cannot live without.
Absolutely. And it's like, as soon as we feel like it's so restrictive, it's like, yeah, that might hold you, kind of like we talked about with emotions, that might hold you for a little while. But then when you stop doing that diet or that thing, then you're going to go crazy and go the other way. So it's like, keep some of those things that you love. It's just about moderation.
Absolutely. So I was stalking you basically this morning as I was preparing for the show. So I went to your website and I noticed you have a great blog, a lot of really great tips and advice on the blog. And there was one that really caught my eye. It would look like it was fairly recent. Surprisingly simple tricks for paying your bills on time. And I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful, because that is another thing that people get kind of like when they get behind on their bills, they have a tendency to stay there. So
Yes.
give us just a few little tips. You don't have to give everyone that was on the blog, but just give us a few little tips of what women can do to get those bills paid on time so it's not hanging over their head.
Well, I'll tell you the simplest trick that absolutely helped me, and it's an Excel spreadsheet. And it sounds so basic and so simple. And it's not anything about number crunching, really. It's about entering, okay, all of the businesses that you owe money to, you put that in one category. Then you put how much you owe them each month, like what's the minimum payment that you owe them. And then you put what's the total amount owed. So if you have a credit card bill that's $5,000, put that in there. Then you put the address, the phone number, the account number, any details at all, but you have this all in one place. So often we wait for the bills to come every month and we don't really pay attention, or you risk having your spouse or your kid put the bill somewhere that you didn't expect it to go, and then you don't pay it that month because you just didn't get the bill because somebody misplaced it. But this way, you don't have to worry about the bills. Oh, and that's another thing you put on there too, is the day of the month that it's due. So you can go into the spreadsheet anytime that you want to and look at, okay, what bill is coming up? What bill is around let's see, it's the 4th today. Okay, what bill is around the 4th, the 5th, the 6th of the month, or for that following week? And then you can send out the payment without worrying about the bill that's coming in the mail and you receiving it. Because I know that happens, and we just forget it if it's not top of mind. And it's not even a bad idea to go to that spreadsheet once a week and just look what bills are coming up, what bills do I owe? And then you can send those payments out right then instead of waiting for it to come in the mail.
And that's a really awesome way to keep track of your progress too, and
It
see
is.
how far you've come.
Exactly. Yes. It's like you can see what your starting point was, what you owed in the beginning. And then it's really encouraging as you're like, oh, I paid off $1,000 of debt. I paid off 5,000. You start to see the traction that you're getting, and that's what gives you an extra boost.
And I did make a face when you said Excel spreadsheet, because I just don't do spreadsheets. I just can't do them. I've tried. I know how to read one, but it's like, I'll just write things out old fashioned longhand. That's just kind of my style. But as you're talking about that too, I was thinking about we can again apply this to health and wellness or dietary by making a grocery list and planning your meals ahead of time. So that's what I was thinking when you're talking about planning, paying your bills. That's how you plan your trips to the grocery store.
Yes, yes. And you know what? That reminded me, there was a time when I was first creating my budget that I had a list of what items were at what grocery store and for what price. Like what cheese was at Safeway versus Albertsons versus Fred Meyer's. And I had never ever been that person before. So it was interesting. I don't still do that today, but you can find different ways to do things. And sometimes certain things will work for you and others won't. And you're like, okay, I'm going to disregard that one, but you find the things that work for you and like double down on those.
And the things that work for you might not work for someone else, because we all have different needs, wants, styles, personalities, biology, etc. So I love the fact that you talked about that, because I think that's really important. It's not a one size fits all program.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? That is why I created the color coded budget, because I hate numbers. Like I really have never been a numbers girl. And when I first started budgeting, it's like, it took me so long to figure it out. Listen, it's not that hard, but it was my mindset, right? Like I was like, oh, I sucked at math in school. I'm going to be so bad at this. It's like addition and subtraction or a calculator, but that mindset block can be huge. And so that's why I created the color coded budget, to make it more about colors and less about numbers, because the numbers can just be so dang stressful and that can intimidate people alone. And it doesn't have to be that way.
It's almost like a game.
Yes.
And again, that's mindset. This isn't work. It's a game. And let me see if I can beat the game by making little changes. And that's how I have approached a lot of different things in my life when I was trying to improve on something or, get rid of certain habits or whatever. It's like, it's a game. Let me see if I can, game the system and just get around it somehow and get what I want.
Yes, yes. And, we think that we have to be like a perfectionist or be so perfect at something or do it the same way that everybody else did. And it's like, nope, that's just not true. Like you said, make it a game, make it fun, make it something that's not so like, it's not drudgery doing it, and that will change it for you. It's like that little bit of curiosity or like, ooh, how can I switch this to work for me? How can I make this fun? And then that gets you a little bit more exciting as opposed to, oh, I suck at this, I'm never going to be any good. Instead of focusing on that part and beating yourself up, it's like, yeah, make it a game, make it fun, make it something that you enjoy doing, or make it a challenge.
Yeah, it's no good beating yourself up, because there's always other people out there who are much better at beating you up and who would want to do it for you. But that brings us back to something you said at the very beginning of the show, is compare and despair. And when you're looking at the way somebody else is doing it and it's working for them, and you're comparing yourself to their process or what they're doing, that can be self-defeating. So just remember that this is just really, really individualized, personalized, and you have to custom it to yourself and your own needs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And here's the thing. We compare ourselves to other people and we have no idea where they are in their journey. We have no idea what it took them to get there. You might see something on Instagram or Facebook and it looks all bright and shiny, but you don't know all the steps that it took for them to get to where they are today. So like, just stay in your own lane, don't worry about what other people are doing. Just focus on what you're doing.
Yeah. You don't see the muck underneath of what they had to climb through to get to where they are right now.
Exactly.
So how then did you kind of get interested in the health aspect of coaching? I'm really curious about that transition, because I think, it sounds like a natural transition to me, just because of what you're talking about with the mindset and what you went through to get to this point with your financial life. It makes perfect sense because it is so applicable to pretty much every aspect of your life. So how did that happen?
Yeah. So actually, I'll be honest, it happened absolutely selfishly. Like, it happened trying to figure out my health. And I'll tell you, I've been a bit like Oprah, like overweight, underweight, overweight, underweight. And I keep going back and forth. And I see my mom struggling with the same thing. And it's like, I don't want to deal with this for another 30 years or another 40. You know what I mean? I want to solve this issue right now and get to the core of it. Not, I've done Weight Watchers and a million other diets, but I didn't want to keep doing the same thing over and over. I guess that's insanity, right? When you keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So I figured, okay, let me figure this out once and for all. And that's why I joined and became a health coach.
That's amazing. So are you working as a health coach now? So you're a full-time police officer and have these two coaching programs.
Yeah, I am. And again, I attribute it all to the finances, like knocking over a domino, and then it lets you do one thing or the next thing. And I just got done running a half marathon, and I've run a couple marathons since that point. And it's like, after the finances, it just triggered something for me and allowed me to believe that I could do hard things. And so, like I said, just one thing, you only have to do one thing and just keep like chipping away at it. And over time, you'll be amazed at like the huge impact that it has.
So you are a total badass. First of all, I just had to say that. And because who doesn't love being a badass and who doesn't love saying it? So another thing that just really occurred to me as you were talking about that, because the question was, how do you manage being a full-time police officer? And you've got these two areas of coaching. And here you are, you're running marathons and half marathons and all of this stuff. It seems like all of the work that you've done to get out of debt is now working into time management. So you can do all of these things that you want to do.
Yes. And then it's like, now I also have the courage to do them, and I have the confidence to do them. And so even if I don't know how to get through it, or I don't know how it's going to turn out, I'll still try it. Like, I'm still willing to jump into the things that I want to do.
Mm-hmm. And do those dance parties no matter what.
Yes, absolutely.
I love it. There's one thing I really want to ask you about, just because of your background as a police officer, and something that is really so important to me, very near and dear to my heart, is personal safety for women. And I just, as a police officer, if you can give a couple of tips of how to keep yourself safe in what seems to be a not always a safe world, and highlight some of the mistakes that women might make to make themselves more attractive to predators, and the things that they can do then to make themselves less of a target. So I know that was a mouthful.
Yeah, I think it comes like, be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of what you're at, like where you're at. A lot of times people don't even know where they're at. They're just walking to their car, but they don't know where they're at. If they had to describe, call 911 right now, where are you at? People don't pay attention to what street they're on. And so be aware of your surroundings, what's going on. If there are suspicious looking people, you probably don't want to go that way. Even when you're parking next to a car, or you're parking next to a van, especially because that's where it tends to happen, is the van. Like, I don't usually park next to a van, or at least not where I'm gonna have to get out right next to them. I will just choose to park somewhere else or walk a little bit further. And, that's a little bit safer. But then also park in well-lit areas. That's another part of it, is, pay attention to where you're parking, just in safe areas. And you know what, as women, we have an intuition and a gut instinct. And I think so often we ignore that, or we push it down, or we're like, oh, you're being stupid right now, you're being ridiculous, and try to talk ourselves out of that gut feeling that we had. Man, so many times, like that's powerful. That ends up being what you need, is to listen to that intuition. And you know, that it reminds me of a story. Like, yes, it was working as a police officer, but it still kind of conveys the point. Like, I went to a neighbor dispute, simple, basic neighbor dispute. It was an elderly couple, and they were having issues with the neighbor guy, and they said he was throwing rocks onto their property. It didn't sound like anything too crazy. They dispatched me, and something in my gut just said, something's up here, something is off here. So I just asked for a second unit. And so I get there, and come to find out, the guy that was throwing rocks onto their property, his property was like sitting up higher, and the elderly couple's was lower. And so he was mowing his lawn, and the neighbor was like throwing big boulder type rocks down to where he was mowing the lawn, and it could have seriously injured him. So I go to talk to the neighbor that was throwing the big rocks, and my partner wasn't there yet. But I go talk to him, kind of went around the property. He's not answering the door. And then all of a sudden he comes like charging up on me, like really fast. And at the same time, my partner pulled up, and he was like angry, yelling, cussing at me. And I had to like kind of, push him back and be like, don't walk up on me like that. You need to calm down. Well, my partner got out. We ended up talking this guy, calming him down, and we did end up arresting him. But the thing is my partner was like, oh my gosh, I thought that was going to be so much worse than it was. I thought he was going to fight us. Absolutely. And you know what? If I hadn't have called for a partner, for a second person, who knows what would have happened? Because two people are, stronger than one person. And he could have been like, oh, I'm absolutely not going to be able to pull anything off because there's a second person here. But it was a seemingly ordinary call. There was nothing crazy about it, but just something in my gut, like that little tingle, or like something's off here. And I listened to that, and, things turned out okay. But I think don't be afraid to listen to that intuition. When you have that feeling that something's off or something's weird, or if somebody, like say a guy is approaching you and trying to convince you of something, and you're just feeling like something is off here, just don't listen. Go with your gut. You don't have to do what other people say. And, sometimes people try to convince you of something other than what you believe, or try to make you feel safe when it's not a safe thing. It all comes back to that intuition, to that gut feeling. And I can't even tell you a time where it steered me wrong. If anything, you're safe and okay. And what's the downside of that? So really, that's what I would say, is listen to your gut and your intuition.
I think as women, we're almost conditioned to not listen to it, or to not pay attention to it. It's, oh, you're exaggerating, you're over dramatic, he's really a nice guy, give him a chance, or, we're just overreacting. And you hear that enough, and it's just like you stop listening to it.
Right. Yes.
But it is such a powerful tool that we have in each and every one of us.
Yes. Yes. And what is the worst it's going to do? Keep you safe? Like, who cares if somebody, is upset, or they don't like you because you had your own boundaries, right? You said
Right.
no, and you followed your intuition. Usually nothing bad comes of it. It's just you setting a boundary and listening to your intuition.
Or worrying about how the person's going to feel, or, oh, I'm going to look stupid if I just remove myself from the situation right now, or, oh, they're going to think I'm, scaredy cat. Who cares what people think?
Yes, right. Because we talk ourselves into, like, and of course not everybody, but it's easy to talk yourself into a compromising situation, where your gut told you no, but you just didn't want to offend anybody. You didn't want your friends to be upset, or you didn't want that person to be upset. And it's like, your safety is paramount. That's number one. And if somebody else has an issue with that, it's like, well, that's their problem, because your safety should always be number one.
Absolutely. Very well said. Marie, where can people find you?
You can find me at ordinarytobadass.com or Ordinary to Badass on Instagram, Facebook, and there also is an Ordinary to Badass community on Facebook.
And there is an Ordinary to Badass podcast.
Yes, there is an Ordinary to Badass podcast. And then coming up in April, there will be an Ordinary to Badass financial book. So definitely look for that on Amazon.
Ooh, that's very exciting. Congratulations.
Yep. Thank you. It's going to be a woman's guide to going from ordinary to badass with your finances.
You have to let me know when it comes out, and
Yeah,
I can help
absolutely.
you promote it. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
have just kind of launched my second book, but it took a while to get it, birthed into the world. And but it's an incredible process. So congratulations with everything else that you're doing, with the 2 coaching programs, again, working full time, marathon runner, taking care of yourself, and finding the time to write a book. Going back to that, you learned something about time management along the way, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? I learned too that I have more time than I think I have.
I think we all do.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have any final pearls of wisdom that you would like to leave with the audience?
I would just say you are capable. You can accomplish your dreams. You can do hard things. Be consistent and persistent. That's the huge thing. Whatever it is that you want to do, just take one step every day, one teeny tiny step. It doesn't have to be anything big, nothing huge. It's like, just keep chipping away at it and you will get there.
Excellent. Marie, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me on. It was so much fun.
And everybody, thank you for listening, and really check out Marie's podcast and check out her website, her blog, a lot of fantastic information. And of course, we've got that book out really soon. That's going to be another fun and valuable tool for you. And remember that we are all badass. And you just have to find that path of how to go from ordinary to badass. And Marie can help you with that. So you might want to give her a call or contact her, connect with her on social media, check out her website, and start that journey from ordinary to badass. And that is the way of the FemiNinja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.